So I'm guessing getting ready for a new season.
Finally.
And yeah, I'm sure the weather will cooperate all season long and all that good stuff. But obviously, throughout the years, you guys have had success. You've had where teams coming in, kind of the younger teams, and kind of getting that experience. But looking at the team so far, what do you got?
We started the season with a really large team and a pretty core group of 4-year rowers, and this is the first time where we've had a fair amount of attrition between December and January. So your upper division majors classes, some really tough classes that kids did not pass and didn't make satisfactory progress. And I think we lost 5 or 6 4-year rowers in a 1 month period of time. So it's a little daunting, but we did a really big recruiting this year in anticipation of so many 4-year rowers graduating that the team that we've recruited and come in is quite fast. And we've been seeing at practice that these young freshmen are just really pushing the varsity. We've seen the novice really start to kind of push into their water to win a few races, and I think that bodes well for the program. Whether that shows up this season in our top boats, which is always a potential, we feel fairly confident for what comes in the next 3 years beyond this season. So, but nobody really knows until that first regatta. We row by ourselves, with the tide, against the tide. And it's hard to understand how fast we are until we get to Sacramento. And then, of course, it's a big deal. We'll see Sac State, and, they've always kind of been similar relative speed to Western Washington, so we have a fairly good idea how we're doing. But, here you are mid-March. If you're not doing very well, you don't necessarily have a lot of time to make that up. University of Portland will be there, St. Mary's College. Our Division II rivals, UC San Diego, will be there, Mills College. So I think that's the lineup that we see on Saturday. And then on Sunday we go to Davis and we race against Davis. And I think UCSD is also attending that event, as well as there's one school that's eluding me right now. But it's just a really exciting couple of days of racing. Especially when you start in August and your first event is in mid-March. So, the kids, the novice kids the ladies are, what's it all about? What's going to happen on Saturday? And I think no matter what we've done this season, nothing prepare them for that first head-to-head competition.
If you give me some background of the name of the event on Saturday, I know past years you guys have got down there, competed, and then also stuck around. Yeah. And kind of got some extra training for spring break. So the name, and then is that something that you guys will be doing again?
For sure. This is our season opener. It's called the Sacramento Invitational. It's at the CSUS Aquatic Center on Lake Natoma, just below Folsom in Gold River. So it's a ways away from campus, but it's a world-class rowing venue. And NC2A National Championships have probably been held there more than at any other place in the United States. It's just it's a first-class venue. So we'll race there on Saturday morning. First race I think is at 8 o'clock, and last race is at about 10:30. So it's fairly quick. And then on Sunday we'll row out of the Port of Sacramento, which is in West Sac. Even though it's hosted by UC Davis, it's nowhere near the campus. And that's a really interesting place to row, because you'll be coming down the course and there'll be these big tankers and freighters that are just kind of cruising by. But it's a fun dynamic race course.
Usually when you guys compete, it's a Saturday and that's it. But competing both Saturday and Sunday, 2 different venues. It has to make it kind of, especially at the start of the season, it has to make it a little interesting for the athlete.
Well, I think what we find, of course, is that you train all year and you get to mid-March, and think about the length of our season is about 2 months. And you need as many races as you can get as possible before you really start, I think Covered Bridge is where we see just about everybody in the West region, and we have new teams that have come into the West region. So this year, University of Central Oklahoma is moving into the West region, which means that we'll actually be traveling to Central Oklahoma at the end of this month, right? And they took second place at the national championships last year. Very fast team. When we go to Covered Bridge, we'll see all the other schools in the West: Western Washington, Seattle Pacific, UCSD, Humboldt State. And your first face-off with Western Washington, it's been on their minds now for months, right? The reigning national champions back up on that podium. So racing 2 consecutive days, I don't think necessarily hurts us. I think of it anything, it helps us. We may come off the block on Saturday morning just, think about novice free spirit, and you have the race plan, and then sometimes that excitement, that race plan goes right out the window. We saw that today in our seat racing today. The number 1 boat should have been well out in front, and they weren't, and here comes the novice. And so that shows us that even in what we might consider the perfect conditions at home, we may rise up on Saturday or we may flail about. So, that's important to us, is to be able to get in a couple of races. And then, of course, we'll stay down there for the week to try to get in some scrimmages with both Sacramento and Davis. Occasionally we're able to get one of those off sometime during the week. Of course, later in the week, people are pretty tired. And, as you said, the weather is always perfect for our regattas, as we like to say. The forecast is rain solid for the next week in Sacramento. But what we know is a bad day in Sac is usually a better day than at Humboldt, because we've lost 2 consecutive weeks of training in Humboldt with the last series of storms. So, land training wise, I think we look pretty solid. When you add in water, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Lastly for me, and I don't know if you want to comment on this, but in the fall, it's the whole budget. Rowing program in question. Would it survive? And obviously the history and just what you guys have been able to accomplish with the national titles. How great is it to see that the program still here, still in the water?
I think we all feel very fortunate, right? The spotlight, while it was on football, I think very few people knew that rowing was actually on that same chopping block as football. And I'll tell you, I'm a pretty optimistic person, but I think Duncan Robbins had kind of indicated that the president had made a decision and that it was not good. And so I think the day that we read that the press conference was going to be out in Redwood Bowl, Pat and I looked at each other and said nobody in their right mind would cut football on the football field. So we felt like maybe we had a stay of execution, but it weighed heavily on us in the fall. We tried not to bring our students into it to really to the forefront of where I think some of the returners really were kind of keyed into it. But I think we really did just believe that this was going to be the end. So I think we all feel great fortune for that. We're still seeing programs emerge as intercollegiate sports, and so it was. I think it took a little wind out of our sails when they talk about cutting athletics. And obviously as a coach, we understand the value of athletics and how that enhances academics and how marketable our students are when they leave, because they leave with skills. So it's hard to kind of run up against budgets, because those are real. If you don't have money, then you're going to have to make some tough decisions. But I'll tell you, it weighed heavily on us in the fall. So to be able to say March 24th is our home regatta, we have 8 teams that are coming this year. Biggest regatta we've had probably in the history of the program. And we just want to put on a really good show for our home, and really approach this season like we would have no regrets at the end of it. So we're excited to start in Sacramento this weekend, but really just kind of hoping to build on the momentum that we've created this year so far.
Sounds good. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.